Okay, welcome everyone. I'm David Rammel, editor of Virtualization and Cloud Review, here to moderate our first session as well as welcome you to our Microsoft 365 and Teams in 2023 Summit, brought to you by CoreView, Martello Technologies, Acronis, Smart Deploy, and Vonage. Before we start today's event, we do have some announcements. First, we want to let you know this event is being recorded and will be available for future viewing. You'll receive an email when the replay is available, generally within the next few days. Also, each of today's 3 sessions will be followed by a 5 to 10 minute Q&A. So please be sure to put your questions into the Q&A area of your console as they come up so we can get them answered for you by our experts. And during today's 3rd session, we will be giving away a Nintendo Switch. But you must be present to win, so be sure to stay on for the entire event. Finally, we do have resources from our sponsors available on the console right now, so please download and check those out. It's because of our sponsors underwriting this content that we can bring you this summit, so we thank them for supporting the community and ask you to check out those resources so we can bring you more events in the future. Now on to the first session of today's summit, Microsoft 365, what's hot and what's coming in 2023. This session features Nathan O'Brien, a consultant at Slalom. From Portland, Oregon, Nathan is a Microsoft Certified Solutions Master in Messaging and a 5-time former Microsoft MVP for Office servers and services. He specializes in Exchange, Office 365, Active Directory, Azure, and Teams. Nathan works as an independent consultant and actively contributes to the Exchange and Office 365 communities by writing articles for several tech websites and his own blog. Nathan, it's great to have you here. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, David, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Glad you could all join us here today. Looks like we have a pretty decent-sized crowd in attendance. That's always great to see. So today we're going to talk about new features in Microsoft 365. This is kind of a hodgepodge collection of new features that I personally found interesting and wanted to talk about here. There's no real rhyme or reason or unifying theme to the features that we're going to talk about today. Some of the things we're going to talk about are in various levels of release and supportability from Microsoft. I will try to point those out as individual features come up, let you know kind of where it is in the Microsoft development process, to know how that's all going. And of course, at any time through the webcast that I'm speaking here, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen there. At the end of the webcast, I intend to leave probably about 10-15 minutes for addressing questions. So we'd like to do that. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in there. We will address them. Before that, plan on spending about 40 minutes going through my slides, talking about my content, and probably about 10-15 minutes on the question and answer. And then we're going to leave a few minutes before the next session, so you have a couple minutes to go get a new cup of coffee or whatnot before the summit continues. All right, so let's get into it and start talking about new features, what's coming in Microsoft 365. First thing I want to talk about is Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync. Lovely name for this feature, this new replacement or assumed replacement for AAD Connect. It would be my assumption that at some point down the road, Microsoft will want to deprecate AAD Connect for the benefit of Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync or just Cloud Sync. That would be my guess at some point. That's kind of Microsoft's pattern. They definitely, for supportability reasons, prefer to have as much of their, as much of the Office 365, Microsoft 365 infrastructure and necessary tools kind of hosted in their infrastructure and controlled by them so that they can provide better supportability for those. So that I would kind of guess that down the road, Cloud Connect Sync will replace AAD Connect, or maybe AAD Connect will be de-emphasized, and Microsoft will encourage Microsoft 365 customers to use Cloud Connect Sync. Cloud Connect Sync is similar to AAD Connect in that what it does is it reaches into your on-premises Active Directory and then syncs objects from your on-premises Active Directory into Azure Active Directory for use with Microsoft 365, Office 365, all those applications. I'm sure we're well aware that the vast majority of Microsoft 365 tenants are synced in this fashion from on-premises. It's usually just smaller organizations that won't have an on-premises Active Directory to sync. It's fairly rare. Certainly not something I deal with a lot. So pretty much all my customers, people I deal with, do end up using AAD Connect to sync into Office 365. There are some interesting new advantages to Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync that I wanted to talk about today. First of all, it only requires a small agent on premises installed. It can be installed on really any server, including domain controllers. There isn't an entire server to set up for that, and you can have multiple agents installed in your on-premises infrastructure. So with AAD Connect, you can really only stand up one AAD Connect server and have it functional. There is the ability to configure a second AAD Connect server as kind of a hot standby, so it's ready to be activated and become functional very quickly. But if your AAD Connect server, one and only, really goes down, then that sync process is going to be stopped until that server is replaced, either by a hot standby or a completely new rebuilt server. With Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync, though, you do have that high availability option to put agents on multiple machines, so that if one machine is offline, that sync process will continue without any interruption. And Azure AD Connect Cloud Sync also enables some different sync configuration options, which I have personally recently used and found very helpful. So again, I'm a consultant. I every day I spend helping customers mostly move into Microsoft 365. And recently I was doing a project for a customer that was an acquisition, merger and acquisition. One company had bought another company, and they wanted to migrate the company they had bought into the existing tenant for the parent company in Office 365. Both organizations had their on-premises Active Directory in place, and the parent company is using AAD Connect to sync their directory into their tenant. So traditionally with AAD Connect, well, not traditionally, just technically, one AAD Connect server can sync to one tenant. That AAD Connect server can connect to multiple on-premises Active Directory forests for that sync, but it has to be one AAD Connect server. In the case of mergers and acquisitions, what happens certainly in this case, and what happens fairly often, is you have two separate companies with two separate Active Directories. They don't have a network connection between them. Setting up that network connection, getting everything, all those networks connected so that the single AAD Connect server can see two different Active Directory forests can take a lot of time and a lot of work and a lot of planning. In these merger and acquisition scenarios, that's not always something that organizations are willing to take the time for. So what I did in this case is I used Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync to sync that second Active Directory into the same tenant. Still, the limitation exists that you can only have one AAD Connect server syncing into a tenant, but you can have an AAD Connect server and multiple Cloud Sync instances syncing into the same tenant. So for this kind of merger and acquisition scenario, I think AAD Cloud Connect Sync, I keep saying that, Cloud Sync, is a great tool, and it really made one of my recent migrations go a lot more smoothly. Provisioning information for Cloud Connect Sync is stored in Azure Active Directory, so there's no real configuration or anything on premises for you to lose or worry about backing up or being unavailable. AAD Connect capabilities. So this is, again, the traditional on-premises Azure Active Directory Connect capabilities. There are some things still that the on-premises tool does that Cloud Connect Sync can't do yet. Cloud Connect Sync doesn't support like pass-through authentication. AAD Connect can set up your ADFS servers for you. I've never actually used that. I always set up ADFS servers independently, but AAD Connect can do some of that setting up for you. AAD Connect provides health monitoring of both Active Directory and the synchronization process that the Cloud Connect Sync really isn't up to the same level on. And AAD Connect has a couple of different filtering options when you deploy either AAD Connect or Cloud Connect Sync. They are going to try to, by default, sync all of your Active Directory, everything that they can reach and read. They're going to try and sync it all. Most organizations that I work with want to filter out specific parts of their Active Directory for various reasons. The filtering process is done differently with AAD Connect and with Cloud Sync. With AAD Connect, I think it's a bit easier. You have that wizard-driven process. It's pretty easy to filter on premises. With the Cloud Connect Sync, you do have to manually put in each OU. If you're going to do OU filtering, for instance, you have to manually list each OU that you want to be synced in the Azure portal. So it's a little bit more of a cumbersome process. And as I found out, if you want to unsync a specific OU from Cloud Connect Sync, there is a much more involved process. You have to actually go into Azure Active Directory, into the applications, and you have to modify the application so that when you remove an OU from your sync scope, then that OU is, everything in that OU is deleted. By default, if you remove an OU from your sync scope with Cloud Connect Sync, it will leave those objects in place and just not sync any future changes for those. So there's a little bit, Cloud Connect Sync is still not as mature as AAD Connect, and it's coming along. Capabilities for AAD Connect Cloud. Oh, this is for AAD Connect. There's more capabilities for the older on-premises service, server that you set up. Synchronizes every 30 minutes. Password changes about 2 minutes on that. These are the features you get with AAD Connect. With Cloud Sync capabilities, really it's very lightweight. It adds high availability using multiple agents. That's great. Allows connectivity to multiple disconnected on-premises AAD forests, like I spoke of earlier. So in that merger and acquisition scenario, you can use Cloud Connect Sync instead of having to do the networking work so that AAD Connect can do the syncing for you. It can be used with Azure AD Connect. That's fully supported, as I did there. Does not support Exchange Hybrid write-back. So if we're talking about Exchange Hybrid, AD Connect Cloud Sync may not necessarily be the right tool. It does not support write-back for that, which may cause issues with your Exchange Hybrid deployment, depending on the features and functionalities you're using there. It doesn't support LDAP compatible identity stores. LDAP version 3 doesn't support objects. There's no it doesn't sync up your workstation. So hybrid Azure AD join. There's no support for Windows Hello. Doesn't support Active Directory attribute synchronization, pass-through authentication, rules editing capabilities. The rule editing capabilities in AAD Connect can be pretty robust. If you go into that MIIS client, the Microsoft Information Manager tool, you can get in and make those synchronization rules pretty robust, and you can do quite a lot with them in AAD Connect, where you won't have that flexibility with Cloud Connect Sync. And it doesn't support cross-domain references. All right, if there's any questions on Cloud Sync, please put them in the portal and we will address them. Okay, here's a list of features, kind of different features between Cloud Connect Sync and AAD Connect. You can see kind of the availability of some of the features in each tool. Make your decision based on what features you need and how these are going to work for you. All right, kind of the next topic I wanted to talk on, and this one's going to be really brief. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on this, but I did see this cool new feature coming to Outlook. Normally, I don't spend a lot of time talking about new features in the Office applications, but this one I thought was pretty interesting, certainly for people like me, and I assume many of you who work both from home and from an office, kind of in that hybrid working scenario. The ability is coming to Outlook so that you can mark, within your Outlook calendar, days and or times that you will be in the office or remote. That can be very helpful for scheduling meetings, making sure everybody's able to attend your meetings, and you can schedule meetings at times when all of your team is going to be in the office. I think this is a cool new addition to Outlook, and I certainly, for one, looking forward to being able to use this and better organize my time and make sure everybody knows where I'm at. All right, moving on. Again, if you have any questions about the Outlook feature, of course, put them in the Q&A panel. Let's move on and talk about Defender for Cloud. So Microsoft Defender is an EMS E5 kind of more high-end security tool available on Microsoft 365. This is really where Microsoft's putting a bunch of resources into securing not just Microsoft 365, but also other cloud platforms. And I think this is an important shift we've seen from Microsoft over the last 10 or 15 years is Microsoft really is now, instead of, the old way they'd make everything Microsoft compatible only with Microsoft and kind of lock you into that Microsoft ecosystem. Now these tools in Microsoft 365, Microsoft is realizing that organizations are going to use multiple cloud vendors. They want to get as much of that business as they can, but where they can, they want to be able to help you manage other cloud deployments in Amazon and Google. So there are some new features in Defender for Cloud that I wanted to mention fairly quickly here. Defender for DevOps and Defender for Cloud Security Posture Management. These are a couple new tools in the Defender suite. You may not have access to them yet in your tenants, but you will soon. Let's talk about those just a little bit. So Defender for DevOps. First of all, I am most certainly not a developer. I don't know most of the things I'm going to say here. I just don't know from a developer standpoint. I do all this from an IT administrator and consultant, kind of running the infrastructure standpoint, certainly not from a developer standpoint. Developer for DevOps is in public preview, and you can activate that from the Azure portal. All the Defender applications, if you go to security.microsoft.com, that's really the web portal for all the Defender applications. Except Defender for DevOps, you do have to go into the Azure portal to activate that. You can activate that in the Azure Active Directory. See there up on the screen, I put where I went into my tenant. Have that Defender for DevOps security preview. You can go in there, and then you can add connector and connect Defender for CloudOps to different code repositories. GitHub, obviously owned by Microsoft, first party supported there, but it also supports Google Cloud and Azure, AWS. So there are different code repositories that you can use. Defender for DevOps will help you ensure that code is secure. It does scan your repository for exposed secrets and operating system vulnerabilities. I'm not entirely sure what that means. I mean, obviously I know exposed secrets is key values that you put in your code for authentication, and operating system vulnerabilities, I think it's fairly obvious, but as I'm not a developer, I'm not entirely sure what DevOps security here is looking for in your code or helping you protect against. But I assume it's something useful, and those capabilities will evolve over time. If you're using Defender and you have coders who are working on code, might be a worthwhile tool to check out. As I'm not a developer, it's hard for me to speak to the efficacy of what Defender for DevOps does in securing your code, but I'm fairly confident that it can give you some useful features. So check that out with your developers and see if it helps your organization. Defender for Cloud Security Posture Management. So what this does, CSPM, is it continually assesses your resources, subscriptions, and organization for security flaws and shows your security posture and secure score. That sounds a lot like the the standard features that are in the other 5 or 6 now Defender applications. It's really just an improvement on that, and the cloud security posture management features here can look at, again, AWS, Google, other cloud repositories outside of just your Microsoft 365. So really what Defender for Cloud Security Posture Management is doing is it's extending that Defender best practices review that you get that report of at security.microsoft.com. It tells you kind of places within your tenant that you can improve your security. This Defender for Cloud Security Posture Management is a new feature that will help you kind of expand that out to other clouds, so that you can, Microsoft will give you their suggestions on how to better secure your AWS and Google clouds, things like that as well. Here is a picture of the Defender for Cloud Security Management kind of plans and configuration from within my Office 365 tenants. You can see you have the Defender CSPM up there at the top. You can go into that and connect Defender for Cloud Security Management posture to other instances and ensure that you're getting better protection across all your cloud resources. Make sure everything's secure. All right. Again, if we have any questions on Defender, anything like that, please feel free to put those questions into the Q&A panel. I do see some questions coming in now, so we will address those probably about 10 minutes. We will go through those. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in there, and we'll address them shortly. All right, next thing I want to talk about is tenant-to-tenant migrations. Again, I'm a consultant, and I do a fair number of merger and acquisitions these days, kind of combining tenants using, because of these mergers, acquisitions, or even divestitures, it becomes necessary to move data between Microsoft 365 tenants. Historically, really the only way to do that is with third-party tools. There are several different companies out there that have third-party tools that are well matured and have been out for a long time for these tenant-to-tenant migrations. But now Microsoft is kind of jumped into the ring there, and they have produced a first-party tenant-to-tenant migration tool for both Exchange and SharePoint. I'm really only going to talk about the Exchange tool here today. I am not a SharePoint person. I don't know much about SharePoint, so it would be difficult for me to speak about that with any sort of authority, but I will talk about the Exchange tool. As you go through the documentation, I think one of the first things that's important to note is there is a licensing fee for these new tenant-to-tenant migration tools from Microsoft. I don't know what the licensing fee is, and even if I did know what it was for a specific organization or migration that I had done, it may be different for you depending on your organization's agreement with Microsoft. Enterprise agreements with Microsoft can often greatly change the the licensing costs in Microsoft 365. So it really depends on how you're buying those licenses, what it's going to cost to license this tool, or what minimum level of licensing you need to maintain to get this tool from Microsoft. But I wanted to mention that there is a fee, a licensing fee that will have to be paid to Microsoft to use this first-party tenant-to-tenant migration tool. It is not free. Probably it will be less than some of the other more mature tenant-to-tenant migration tools out there on the market, and it will definitely have less features than those as well. So when you're planning your tenant-to-tenant migration, I think it's another thing to take into consideration. The availability of this first-party tool, it may be less expensive, but it's also a lot more difficult to set up. The setup for the tenant-to-tenant migration tool is pretty complicated. I'm not going to go through that all here, but you do have to, do some cryptography, some Azure authentication between your tenants so that Microsoft is able to connect those tenants to move these mailboxes between tenants. There is some complicated setup that you have to do, and that setup is done once for each direction that the mailboxes will be moving. So if you're doing, a merger where you are migrating users from tenant A into tenant B, that's all well and fine. You can get it going in that direction, but you would need to repeat the setup in the other direction to be able to move those mailboxes back from tenant B into tenant A. The migrations use the new migration batch commandlet, PowerShell command, to, once you have everything configured, to actually do the mailbox migration between tenants. There are a few known issues with the Exchange tool here. I'm not going to go super into these, but you should be aware that again, this Exchange tenant-to-tenant migration tool is brand new. It's not fully flushed out yet. It's not fully mature. And I would expect that doing migrations with this tool will be more effort than doing them with some of the other third-party tools that are out there on the market, are well matured and are pretty easy to use by now. Probably cheaper, probably more effort. Each organization is going to have to make the decision on which tool to use for your migrations based on that. All right, a few more, 5 or 10 more slides here to go through. Next new thing I wanted to talk about is Microsoft 365 DSC. Put a link to the webpage for Microsoft 365 DSC up there on the screen. This is a new open source tool that is not specifically from Microsoft. The lead developer, the person that kind of owns this GitHub code repository, he's a Microsoft employee. I've spoken to him. He works as Microsoft. He's a Microsoft guy. But it is important to make clear that this tool, Microsoft 365 DSC, that he is developing or developing open source, is not officially supported by Microsoft. So if you are going to use this tool, it's really on you to work with the open source community around that tool if you have any issues with it. You can't call Microsoft support for issues with it. Microsoft 365 DSC is a tool that will compare the configuration between multiple Office 365 tenants and kind of tell you the difference between those different settings across those tenants. And it can even help you normalize or standardize the configurations in multiple tenants. So I have worked with several customers who for various reasons, need to maintain multiple Office 365 tenants. They can't have, all the users in one specific tenant for whatever reason, but they want to make sure that all those tenants meet the same security and compliance and configuration settings. Microsoft 365 DSC is a great tool for that. Basically, it's using PowerShell supported or desired state configuration to kind of read the state of each Office 365 tenant across a whole bunch of configuration options, and it gives you a good report of the differences between those, and then you can use those configuration snapshots to push a specific configuration out onto a tenant. It's really an interesting tool. It's kind of a little bit hard to use at this point, and obviously there's not a lot of support for it. So I've been playing with it a little bit myself. I can definitely see multiple applications for this tool in my work, whether that's coming up to a customer and kind of getting a configuration snapshot of their tenant for purposes of project planning, or helping customers that need to maintain multiple tenants, keep those tenants maintained all the same. There are certainly other tools that if actually I've been speaking to another customer about a potential project. It's a customer that has a bunch of what end up essentially being franchisee sub-companies that they want to be able to bring them all into Office 365 and kind of provide central IT management for all these sub-companies or franchisees that they have. But the problem with that is, this would end up being hundreds of tenants to manage for them. One of the solutions that I proposed to them is this Microsoft 365 DSC. It will give them the ability to configure one tenant and then read all the configurations out from that one tenant and push it out to multiple other tenants. That may be a bit cumbersome, and I think actually for this specific client, we will kind of nudge them in the direction of actually one of our sponsors for the summit today, CoreView, and maybe we'll be setting up kind of a system for that customer where everybody is in one tenant, but we use the CoreView product to kind of segregate those people out. Great new tool. Obviously, Microsoft 365 DSC free of charge. You can install it. Just tap PowerShell, install module, name Microsoft 365 DSC Force. That will download the bits and install that module on your local machine. I put a link up to the Get Started guide from the Microsoft 365 DSC webpage. Go through that, play with the tool, see how it works, and see if it's something that might be useful to you. There is Microsoft 365 DSC does have the ability to also kind of monitor some of the on-premises servers that have implications for your Office 365 tenant. Up here you can see this is a screenshot of AAD Connect. In here, you can see there were some configuration changes that were found on your AAD Connect server. If you use DSC for configuration drift, it can monitor specific servers for configuration changes and then throw an event in the event log that you can pick up with other automation software and be warned about. So if your AAD Connect server, the sync scopes, the OUs that are in sync are changed, this tool can help you kind of find that sort of configuration drift across your enterprise. It also gives you configuration reports. It's kind of an example. Tells you all the settings in Office 365. You can see I kind of put some example settings up there. Goes across Azure Active Directory, Exchange, SharePoint, Intune, really all the major Office 365 services. It gives you a good idea of the configuration of each of those. The reports from Microsoft 365 DSC can be output to Excel or HTML for you to look at. All right. Kind of the next thing we had to talk about here is Microsoft Authenticator. Microsoft is keenly interested in ensuring that all Microsoft 365 customers are using multi-factor authentication as much as possible. Again, I say this quite a lot. The vast majority of breaches that happen within Microsoft 365 are user accounts that aren't using multi-factor authentication. They're just relying on standard username and password. It's over 99% of the breached accounts that Microsoft finds in Microsoft 365 are not using multi-factor authentication. I think it's something like, or I recently saw a statistic from Microsoft, like it's something like 11 or 12% of accounts in Microsoft 365 have ever authenticated using multi-factor authentication. I highly encourage everyone to be using multi-factor authentication or every single authentication into Microsoft 365 or any of your IT resources. IT security is just too important these days. It can do too much damage to a company to have a breach. And multi-factor authentication isn't that hard. As per the example up here, Microsoft Authenticator is a very easy-to-use tool that, in my opinion, gives you a better multi-factor authentication experience than some of the other multi-factor authentication options you have out there. Of course, you can still use SMS or phone call for multi-factor authentication within Office 365, or you can use other authenticator products like Facebook Authenticator or LastPass Authenticator or Google Authenticator. There's a bunch of different authenticator products out there. They all work. Use some form of multi-factor authentication, please, but personally I find that Microsoft Authenticator is the best authenticator tool out there. The kind of new addition, the new feature that I wanted to talk about with Microsoft Authenticator is it is on iOS. It is now FIPS 104 compliant. That is a U.S. government certification. Microsoft achieved this as part of that, part of that big JEDI deal with the Pentagon. Microsoft moving a lot of stuff into Azure, or U.S. government moving a lot of stuff into Azure. Microsoft Authenticator is now FIPS 104 compliant. So that's, for government organizations, that's pretty important, but also it does give us those of us that aren't necessarily need to be FIPS compliant. We don't work in a government organization, I guess, U.S. government organization, but still having that compliancy on Authenticator means that it is secure and it has been verified secure. Can provide great security for your Microsoft 365 tenants. Wanted to give a little bit of a quick kind of show you why I think Microsoft Authenticator is a better authenticator tool. It does have the ability, you can turn on kind of these better authentication prompts. So kind of the standard authentication prompt when you're using multi-factor authentication with one of these authenticator tools is you just get, you're trying to sign in, do you want to, yes or no, kind of just basic pop-up box. While that is very important added security, I think this Microsoft Authenticator screen gives you a lot more. Users can tend to kind of get into rote habits when they just see that authenticator pop up, do you want to authenticate? It's far too often that users will just click yes, even if they're not trying to log on. They'll assume that Outlook is trying to sync something, or one of their applications is trying to pull something from Office 365, and for stuff to work, they just need to click yes. This more detailed authenticator screen gives users more information to kind of make that judgment about whether they should be clicking yes and authenticating that multi-factor authentication session. And it also has a number typing in component to it. So when you're authenticating on your web browser into portal.office.com, and you're using Authenticator, you can have that authentication prompt put up a number on your web browser that the user will then have to type here into the screen. So it, again, provides kind of that more detailed level of insurance that this is really a authentication session, that user should be authenticating. You can see here it tells you who's trying to authenticate, what tenant they're trying to authenticate to, what application they're authenticating to, where they're doing the authentication from, and then they have to read the number off the screen and type it into their phone. It's a 2-digit number, it doesn't take long, it's not onerous, but it provides a great level of additional security. So again, I highly encourage everyone, use multi-factor authentication with all your Microsoft 365 accounts. And personally, I think Microsoft Authenticator provides a better experience for that than other options. But use something, if not Authenticator. All right, one of the last things I want to talk about is Microsoft Entra. Microsoft clearly hates it when you know the names of things. Everything, they change the name of everything so often, does get a little confusing, does get a little old. I would prefer that they stop doing that, but they're not going to. So I guess it's incumbent on people like me to learn all these wonderful new names for existing features, and this is kind of one of them. Well, Entra is kind of a new feature, or it's additional features added to Azure Active Directory. So you can go to entra.microsoft.com. Should be able to do that right now for any of you that have tenants, and you can see this is an Azure AD management tasks for your Microsoft 365 tenant are available in this portal. You can, of course, still go to portal.azure.com and find the Azure Active Directory section in there and use that to manage your Azure Active Directory. You can go to portal.office.com, kind of the Office 365 admin portal. There's some level of Azure Active Directory management you can do from there, but there are new features and new things with your authentication process that you can control from entra.microsoft.com. A couple of those new features, Verified ID is kind of a new concept that not really widely in use yet, but Microsoft is supporting this in Microsoft 365. Kind of gives you that that account that's verified against a known identity provider that you can use in multiple different places instead of having multiple accounts across all your services. Kind of the end goal here is that Microsoft provide Microsoft and other organizations, other identity providers as well, provide a more standardized authentication process that can be more secure across all of the internet. Also provide some identity governance features here in entra.microsoft.com, expanded features beyond what you have in the Azure portal. And there's some conditional access you can do from there. So it's kind of just Microsoft is kind of just trying to build a single identity management portal instead of all the other places that you currently need to go for this identity management in Microsoft 365. Personally, at this time, I think the adding one more portal isn't really simplifying anybody's life, but the hope is that down the road, we'll just have one identity management portal where you can do the vast majority of your tasks. Last slide here, and then we're going to go to questions and give you a break before the next session. The Microsoft Entra does include some permissions management. Can manage permissions for multiple cloud environments in one place. Again, AWS, Microsoft, Google. And these permission management detects, automatically right-sizes, and continuously monitors unused and excessive permissions. So again, Microsoft Entra is kind of looking to be that single identity portal that you can use to manage your accounts in both Microsoft 365 and your permissions across other cloud services as well. With that, we're going to move on to any questions anybody has from the audience. All right, it does look like we have a good number of questions here. David, is there anything that jumps out to you that we want to address first?
Yeah, great stuff, first of all, Nathan. And early on in the presentation, you were talking about Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync does not support Exchange Hybrid Write-Back. I confess I don't know what that means, but it relates to a question from Matthew in the audience. He asked, is Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync, he says, Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync does not support hybrid migrations, though, correct?
No, that's not entirely correct. So Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync does not support Exchange Write-Back, Exchange Hybrid Write-Back. So there are a small set of attributes that when you do Exchange Hybrid have needed to be written back for some of the Exchange functionality to work. That's mostly around unified messaging. Unified messaging isn't a widely used feature, as far as I can tell, in Exchange Hybrid migrations. So I would say that the vast majority of Exchange Hybrid deployments will work just fine with Azure AD Cloud Connect Sync instead of AAD Connect. but there will be some edge cases where it will not fully support Exchange Hybrid functionality.
Okay, continuing on that theme, there's a question from Ramon in the audience. He asked if there's any information on migrating from AAD Connect to the new AAD Cloud Connect Sync.
Yes, names of these things are wonderful and always so easy to say. The answer to that question is no. There is no information on migrating between the two products, and there is really no need to migrate between the two products. If you are currently in an organization where you're using AAD Connect to sync your on-premises Active Directory into your Azure Active Directory, you wish to move from using AAD Connect to Cloud Connect Sync, that process would be to shut down your AAD Connect server, turn it off, make it go away, and then turn on Cloud Connect Sync. There's really no migration there. If you have specific OUs that say you're filtering and you want, the big list of OUs that you're filtering and you want to transfer those, that's a manual process. If you any sort of filtering or any sort of other configurations that you want to transfer between the two products, that's a manual process. You have to manually do that, but there is no migration between the two products. It's just shut one off, turn one on.
Okay, good answer. Changing gears here, a question from Victor. He says, I am running in the GCC High Cloud, and for those who don't know, it's Government Community Cloud. Can you point out whether the different tools work in this cloud as well as the commercial cloud?
Oh, Victor. Yeah, I assume you have this difficulty fairly often. And to answer your question, no, I really can't point out what features work in GCC High versus commercial. So what Victor's talking about, GCC High is a specific type of Microsoft 365 tenant that's for the U.S. government, and it is separate from your standard Microsoft 365 deployments. It's in separate data centers on separate hardware, and GCC High does get features later than standard commercial Office 365. So the features and functionality that we talked about today, maybe some of them will be available in GCC High, but probably it will take some time for them to get there. Reason I can't really talk about that is I don't have access to a GCC High tenant. Unfortunately, unless you work for a government organization and have security needs and get the clearance and get in there, you just can't access those tenants to play with them. So I have my own, standard commercial tenant that I play with all the time, and I see new features there and I play with stuff, but I just can't get a GCC High tenant to do that. So I'm kind of blinded to where the status of those GCC High tenants are. Apologize for that. Sorry. It's an unfortunate consequence of being in that environment. You're just not going to get information as quickly as everybody else about the new features and functionality for you. They will be features that are months or years older than everybody else has had.
Okay, great. And I'd like to remind the audience that we can take questions up until about 5 minutes to the top of the hour in order to give you a short break before the next session. So please send them on in now. And turning to the next question, security, always top of mind. This comes from Cynthia. The crummy thing, I haven't heard the word crummy in a long time. The crummy thing about MFA is that in healthcare, personal cell phones against policy, many will not authenticate via landline, which in itself is an issue in a large healthcare organization, and email can take too long. Would you care to comment on that statement, Nathan?
I agree. It is unfortunate if you're in an organization, whether that be healthcare, government, or some other sort of organization where your end users can't have personal cell phones, or if your organization is set up, if your end users are compensated in a way that your organization can't force them to use their personal cell phones for multi-factor authentication, This issue does come up, and unfortunately, there's not an easy solution for it. There are various other multi-factor authentication options that you can use, including cards, USB keys with Windows Hello. There's a lot of other multi-factor authentication options out there if your users don't have access to cell phones. It's just kind of, you have to go through a process of figuring out what's acceptable in your organization, what your organization wants to pay for. If you're telling your users they can't have their own cell phones and you want to be secure, then they need to do MFA, and you need to find a way to pay for whatever solution is that you want to push out to those users. It's unfortunately the reality of the situation.
Yep, better to be safe than sorry, right?
Absolutely.
All right, here's a question from Lance about Entra, which you talked about toward the end of your presentation. Lance asks, for Entra, would you be using AAD as an IDP for the connected cloud services? Just curious how that works.
So the answer to that is maybe, sometimes, and maybe not. So Entra will be an evolving suite of features. For right now, I don't believe that you can just use your Microsoft 365 account to log into AWS and Google and all that sort of stuff. So, that's not, it's not that easy. It's not a situation where you're just, going to use your Microsoft 365 account seamlessly to log into Google and AWS and all these other things. It's an evolving set of features. Entra right now is more about providing management for those accounts and kind of monitoring and securing the permissions that are applied to those accounts and kind of the permission drift over time with various accounts. It is not, as of yet at least, a single authentication solution for multiple cloud applications.
Okay, let's try to squeeze in one or two more questions here. The next question in the console asks, how do I keep up with all the changes in Microsoft 365? And I would add, besides attending great summits like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say, first of all, everybody's here. You're all here doing, this is keeping up with new features in Microsoft 365. So congratulations to all of you for continuing your IT education in that way here. Other than that, I don't have a single good answer for you. I do this professionally. I do this all the time, working with different customers. I spend a lot of time researching new features and obviously doing webcasts like this. I need to spend some time looking for stuff. I don't know that there's an easier answer than putting the time and putting the work. I like to follow MVP. So if you go to mvp.microsoft.com, find the product that you're interested in, and then it'll list out the current MVPs. Those MVPs will have websites, they'll do webcasts, they'll write papers, that sort of stuff. Follow the MVP community, and find people there that kind of resonate and speak to you. They're covering the topics that you're interested in, and presenting them in a way that works for you. I think that's probably the best way to go about it, but really there are a number of options. LinkedIn Learning. LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft now. They have a lot of stuff on there. Microsoft 365, as you go through the portals, the admin portal for Office 365, there's a bunch of topics that are listed from there. You can link to a bunch of different Microsoft Learning from there. Learn.microsoft.com has a bunch of stuff. So really there's a bunch of different ways where you can get to this. And yes, Ramon, the message center in portal.office.com does update the new messages in there. So you can read about new features. Those are more technical and dry in the message center there. So it's not easy to read or necessarily always the the most entertaining way to get that information. But yeah, the Message Center is another good way to do that. And I think with that, we're about out of time. So David, would you like to wrap this up?
I would like to wrap this up. Thanks again, Nathan, for an excellent presentation and answering all those questions. Everyone else, stay tuned. We're going to take a short break and be back at the top of the hour for our second session of the day, Microsoft Teams, what's hot and what's coming in 2023. So take a chance to check out those resources on your console provided by CoreView, Martello Technologies, Acronis, Smart Deploy, and Vonage, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you to our speakers, my fellow moderators, and of course, our sponsors, CoreView, Martello Technologies, Acronis, Smart Deploy, and Vonage for underwriting this summit and allowing us to bring you this great content. My name is Chris Paoli, editor, and I am here to moderate the second session of our Microsoft 365 and Teams in 2023 summit called Microsoft Teams, What's Hot and What's Coming in 2023. Our speaker for this session is Howard M. Cohen, Senior Resultant, the Tech Channel's Partners Results Group. Howard is a 40-plus year executive veteran of the information technology industry who today writes for and about the IT Channel. He's a frequent speaker at IT industry events that include Microsoft Inspire, Centric Synergy Summit, ConnectWise IT Nation, Channel Pro Forums, Cloud Partner Summit, MicroCorp One-on-One, and CompTIA Channel Con. He also frequently hosts and presents webinars for many vendors and publications. Take it away, Howard.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Howard M. Cohen. I am, as Chris finished off saying, a senior resultant at the Tech Channel Partners Results Group. Today's session is Microsoft Teams, what's hot and what's coming in 2023. Those of you who have attended any of my presentations in the past know that as a writer, I love to start each session with a word of the day. And today is no exception. Today's word is experience. Now, it's likely that only those of you who approach my level of seniority, senior as in age, will recognize the reference. That is, of course, the legendary Jimi Hendrix, whose band was the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and one of his most popular songs was Are You Experienced? So that's why Jimmy's on there, playing the opening riff for our session today. So let's talk about experience. And first of all, I'd like to go back in time to the experience we all shared with SharePoint. Microsoft SharePoint started out as a really good tool. It was a menu that you could use. It listed out your files, and you could simply click on a file and retrieve that file. Your users didn't have to remember a drive letter. They didn't have to remember which subdirectory the file was in. They simply went to SharePoint and clicked on the file they wanted and got it. That was great. Today, of course, is a little different. SharePoint is everything to everybody. It's the Swiss Army knife of data management. It's enormous. It has its own programming language. It provides for all kinds of automation. It does e-discovery with extended search capabilities. It has hooks literally into everything. And it's a mammoth platform that is used for a wide variety of applications. Similarly, those of you who ever used Microsoft Dynamics CRM will remember about a dozen years ago when it was introduced, it was a contact management system that gave you the ability to track your relationships with customers, what interactions you had with them, what you were doing with them. Today, Microsoft Dynamics is an enormous platform. It allows you to manage your field service organization. It allows you to conduct extended campaigns and track all kinds of analytics. It's an enormous, very popular platform. Today we're here to talk about Microsoft Teams. The other platforms, as I said, started out small, got very, very large. Microsoft Teams is no exception. Microsoft Teams started off, and you'll see it right over here on the right-hand side, as the chat-based workspace for Office 365. And as the workspace, you could chat with other people that were simultaneously editing with you on Office documents. So it was terrific. But, of course, today, we look at Microsoft Teams, and there's very few things it can't do. It is not only a chat, but you can also call each other. You can video with each other, video conference, whiteboard. You can do all kinds of things communication-wise. You can also manage your projects in there. You can save and retrieve files, trying to catch up a little. And it is an excellent platform for your users to stay in all day long. If they stay in Teams, they can get at their applications, they can communicate with each other, they can collaborate with other colleagues, use applications together. It's a remarkable platform. And of course, it's got so much. I mean, look at the menu, look how much it has. It's really incredible how much there is in Teams, but wait, there's more. Yes, there's more coming in 2023 for you to experience Microsoft Teams. And
this is packaged this year as Teams Premium. Teams Premium is going to introduce a whole other level of depth in the features that it brings to you. So I thought we'd spend the day talking about the new Teams experience. And to do that, I went to the introduction that was written by Nicole Hershowitz, who is the vice president for Microsoft Teams, and I started there to look at the new features, and then I reviewed some of the reviewers who have beta tested it. So let's just take a look at a couple of the features and add to the experience. So in her introduction, she mentioned that it's built on the familiar all-in-one collaboration experience that is Microsoft Teams. Now compare that to what we just said a moment ago about the chat-based workspace. From chat-based workspace to familiar all-in-one collaboration experience. Okay, clearly Microsoft knows that they've grown a big platform here. And, they talk about it again that this time, built on that all-in-one collaborative experience, it will make meetings from your one-to-one face-to-face meetings to group meetings and conferences more personalized, more intelligent, and more secure. And that's what I'm referring to when I talk about the depth of these additions this year. Really tremendous amount of depth to them. They also promote the fact that you get all of this for one low price. Now, in talking about the experience coming to all in one package for one low price, what they're saying is that you can engage more deeply with customers. That's really this year's theme. Let's not just engage with customers. Let's not just engage with each other. Let's engage more deeply so we can do more with less. So the first feature that they mentioned is the all-new meeting guides. Now, one of the interesting things about meeting guides is that they can be managed by IT. Your IT department can lay out templates for various kinds of meetings that other companies may not conduct. So the meeting guides will help your users figure out where is the best venue for a given meeting. Maybe it's a conference room. Maybe it's a restaurant. Maybe it's a hotel conference room. Maybe it's an airline lounge, or maybe it's here on Teams. They can get help making a decision which would be most effective, and how should they prepare for it, and how it then will conduct all of the functions that you think it takes to invite people to a meeting. To do that, it uses virtual appointments, another part of the end-to-end experience. This time, extending the experience to the matter of booking meetings. All the reminders, the number of reminders, the nature of reminders, they're all customized. One thing they keep pointing out is that the reminders and everything else are all branded. So you have a really extended opportunity to promote your brand using Teams Premium to get you there. So virtual appointments will automate the entire booking process, not just reserving a date. Another thing that is not new, but relatively new, is that your attendees will not have to download Teams. They will be able to use a browser, whether it's on a PC or a mobile device. They can use a browser to get connected into a Teams meeting. And again, they're pointing out it's customer-branded virtual appointments. When they arrive, the waiting room will be customized. That is, it's customized to that meeting, it's customized with your branding, as they say, a branded first-class experience. Coming sometime later in the year, they're also going to enable a chat capability, so people who are in the waiting room will be able to chat with people while they're waiting to get into a meeting. This is interesting to me because I think this is something that they've been working on for quite some time. As the pandemic progressed, we got to the place where people no longer had to stay at home. And it's okay, you can come back to the office now. And a lot of people didn't want to. As a matter of fact, the overwhelming majority would prefer to work at least part-time at home. And so we started seeing the hybrid workplace develop. The hybrid workplace has been a boon to a lot of people. And so Microsoft is doing everything they can to accommodate that the hybrid workspace. Here's an example. When you're in a conference room, let's say you're one of those people who goes to the office to work every day, and there's going to be a conference, and some of you are going to be in the conference room. Others are going to be coming in from their own remote stations at home. If you're in that conference room, you're used to seeing the video of your conference room, the table you're sitting at, on the screen, wrapped by the film strip, the gallery of other attendees. You really don't need to see the table you're sitting at. And so proximity joining differentiates between the conference room itself and all the other users. It also differentiates for people who are sitting in the conference room but using their own laptops. So that not just the big screen gets the change, but all the laptops that are in the room get the change as well. So this optimizes, as they say, the meeting experience. You can see more. You have more real estate on the screen to see the other attendees rather than looking at a picture of a room that you happen to be sitting in. They've also enhanced the video gallery. This is, we talk a lot about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the marketplace, as well as in our IT teams and whatnot. Here, Microsoft has really made some very important contributions to equity and inclusion. In that same environment where you have people in a conference room and people coming in from home via their remote stations, I'm sure you've all experienced, I'm sorry, I'll try to switch to another microphone on here. And let me know if this sounds better.
Hey, Howard, that sounds a lot better.
Okay, sounds good. So I was saying that the enhanced video gallery, what it does is it takes all the people who are in the conference room and it gives them the same kind of frame that the remote users have. So if you're in the conference room, there's a frame on the gallery with your picture. Now, we've all experienced conferences where the people in the room really had an advantage over people who were coming in remotely because they could just talk and just get the floor. And people who were at home, kind of had to capture everybody's attention or raise their hand or do something. Now, everybody basically embarks from the same platform. They can see everybody on the screen, and they can, raise their hands on the screen. And everybody has a certain level of equity in the conference experience, and everybody is similarly included in the conference experience. So the enhanced video gallery experience is going to be a very positive one for a lot of users. One of the most powerful new additions is Intelligent Recap. Now, Intelligent Recap starts with the ability to, it starts with a cheat sheet for every conference that suggests things you may want to talk about, things you may want to focus on in the conference. It monitors the conference. It transcribes the conference later. It also, using an artificial intelligence engine, suggests things that came out of the conference. It breaks the conference recording into chapters to help you organize your thoughts and your notes from it. It really becomes an amazing tool to help the user if they didn't happen to make it to the meeting, or even if they were there. It gives them some deeper insights and frameworks for thinking through more deeply, more robustly, more richly. So Intelligent Recap is something I'm looking forward to seeing as it rolls out. Live translation for caption. Whatever language you're speaking, one of 40 spoken languages, Teams will translate it for you. So you get the information in your language on your screen. And there again, a real addition to the intimacy of the experience designed for you. So net, when you're using Teams for conferences, you'll be able to keep up on the action using AI-generated recommended tasks. It's going to recommend follow-up for you. You'll start off with that cheat sheet that I mentioned. And the transcript is just a much smarter transcript than we've become accustomed to. Also, you know that Microsoft is very focused on security. A few years back, they were panic-stricken by some of the exploits that have happened, so they tripled their efforts, and today we have a much more secure environment. But they'll be watermarking, they'll be limiting data leaks or eliminating data leaks, and giving you more control over who can record. So you'll find that it's a much more secure, much more private experience in Microsoft Teams. Okay. I can't really express the benefit that I think you're going to get, actually, more than the users themselves. But more than the users themselves, you as management and IT management are going to have deeper insight into wait times, staff performance, individual performance, and across the organization performance. There'll be all kinds of analytics to help you see what's happening at these conferences. Are they effective? Are they doing what you want them to be doing? And so hopefully, people joke that meetings are where minutes are kept, but hours are lost. Well, hopefully this will help you combat that. You'll be able to take a much closer look at what meetings are doing in your organization and what you can expect to get at. And to my mind, that's a very exciting opportunity. So look forward to playing with Microsoft Teams Analytics.
Webinars also are getting an update. As we've seen today, often when you're hosting an event, the unexpected can happen, and you may have to go to a backup solution to help make it continue and help the presentation survive. Not just audio problems, but also internet and video problems. There are new host controls being added to Microsoft Teams webinars so that you can handle those things better, as well as management controls, as they say, to make it seamless to connect with any audience. The idea is to enhance the webinar experience by making it more resilient, as we can see is desperately needed. In the course of the webinar recruiting process, there will be registration wait lists and manual approvals. Anticipating that you have a limit to how many people you can have in a webinar, if you reach that limit but more people apply, you can wait for it will wait for an opening, and it will fill that opening by reaching out to the next person on the wait list. You can override that manually, but it's giving you more of a functionality to manage and not overload the experience. Okay, in terms of the core functionality of Microsoft Teams, beyond the communication, there's the collaboration capabilities. And the biggest core of that is channels. Shared channels will now be able to include members of your organization and outsiders as well, so that you'll be able to have a more robust functionality coming out of your channels. So Microsoft Teams is addressing that as well in their premium version. Then we get on to phone. You may be familiar with Operator Connect Mobile. That is now becoming Microsoft Teams Phone Mobile. They're making clear this is enterprise grade, and it is mobile first. This is the mobile first, cloud first world, according to Satya Nadella. Well, you'll now have a single number. This has been a panacea for me for decades. I've always wanted to have it, and I still don't. But maybe now I will. One number will be your desk phone number if you maintain a desk phone, your mobile number, and your Teams number. You'll literally be able to give somebody one number to reach you any way they want to reach you. And that's powerful. So, they're building this in partnership with some of the most well-known and reliable carriers in the industry. So you can be guaranteed it really is enterprise grade, and it's going to enjoy it. So the meeting and calling experiences will both be available on the Chrome browser and the Edge browser, both of which are, of course, built on the same Chromium technology. So it's not surprising that they're both capable of connecting you in. You'll have new functionalities like pre-join, dynamic view, and an updated control bar to make it easier to use Teams. I'll say that phrase again because I'm sure a lot of you will be very excited about it. I know I am. An updated control bar to give you a much more facile experience using Teams, which is terrific to hear. They're also talking about Teams Rooms. Teams Rooms Pro will give you all that you're used to, and they're going to enhance the security. They're giving it more management functionality. And again, you can see that they are focusing on improving hybrid optimization so that hybrid meetings can be better supported Okay, so we've looked at some of the big functionality that's coming with Teams Premium. Now what I'd like to do is look at what's coming for 2023 on the small side. Because really, when you come down to it, if you keep track of the regular notices that come out telling you as a Teams user, what new improvements have been introduced, there are going to be plenty of them. There were plenty of them in 2022. Here's a list of some of the ones that are coming coming soonest. Furthest out, 6 months from now, we'll be seeing support for breakout rooms on the Android platform. Right away, we're going to see things like whiteboard attribution for sticky notes, which is a small thing. Paging on the video gallery so you can see everybody who's there. New tag management settings to improve your tagging capability. This is a very impressive list, and this is just a list of what's scheduled. There are 77 more similar improvements that are already being developed and will go through preview and then ultimately general availability as the year goes on. If you'd like to see more of those and get a deeper dive into all the small stuff that is coming out that just makes Teams better and better, the link at the bottom of the screen is where that's located. This is the Microsoft Teams roadmap for 2023. And I think you're going to find just reading through it is very encouraging. So lots to see. Okay. I like to, Simon Sinek tells us to start with why. In this case, in this webinar, I'm going to end with why. Why? Why is Teams continuing to grow so much? Why is Microsoft so focused on growing Teams? And the answer really is that they see the world as becoming smaller. It's easier and easier to reach each other. And they wanted to provide a platform that is geographically agnostic. Now, geographically agnostic means it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you are. We talked in a recent session about placelessness. People who are talking to you don't know where you are. They have no idea. And it doesn't matter. People who want to hire you, it used to be that you had to be within geographic proximity of them so you could travel to work. Now, they can hire people from anywhere in the world who have the skills and capabilities they're looking for. And so Teams becomes an important component of that person's ability to work with them, and it becomes the platform through which many people just work for their company, the platform through which customers and the suppliers who serve them conduct business, geographically agnostic. And really, when you think about it, all you need is a headset, a smartphone, and a smartwatch, and you're really kind of set to work. Now, of course, many people can't compose on a smartphone, so yeah, let's get a desktop or a laptop PC or even a tablet to do that with. The point is that by connecting to the internet from wherever in the world you are, you can connect to all your resources, all of your colleagues, all of your management in one place. It's a functionality called AI-enhanced mediated interpersonal communication and collaboration, which is a mouthful. But each word in it is kind of important. The fact that it's AI-enhanced means that Microsoft is not trying to introduce whopping that do monumental things. They've realized that AI is really best used when it's embedded into the things you use every day. And so it's used to enhance your capability. Mediated simply means that you're using the internet, you're using microphones and cameras and headsets to see and hear each other. Interpersonal emphasizes the fact that it's still about communications between people, between one person and another, or between one person and many people. It's all about communicating with each other and working together, collaborating with each other. And so, in essence, this gentleman that we're seeing here, this is the ultimate information worker of tomorrow. He's a fully functional Teams professional for 2023. The only thing, he's got his mobile phone in his hand, he's got his smartwatch on, he's wearing his earbuds, and the only thing he might be missing is a HoloLens. Maybe we throw a HoloLens on him, and that's, but then we make it look like a geek. So let's not do that. In any case, that is a glimpse of what's coming in the Teams premium experience in 2023. Hey, Chris, do we have any questions?
We do. Let's see. Here's one from Brian. How do I check the version of Teams I have?
How do you check the version? I've never checked the version of Teams. I don't know where in the menu it is. I apologize.
Huh. Okay.
It's very likely.
Oh, go ahead.
Look for an about somewhere, because it's usually under the about with Microsoft.
Okay. Lee wants to know, how do you use the phone number functionality when you have integrations between Microsoft Teams and ServiceNow to help with the ticketing resolution?
Yeah, again, I'm not the guy to ask that question. But if you'll email me your email address, I'm at hmc@howardmcohen.com. I'll be more than glad to access somebody from the mobile phone, Teams mobile phone division to get you that answer.
Okay, let's see. What else do you think they'll add in Teams next?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time talking about that. It's hard. It's hard to. I think that the next thing we're going to see is more visual enablement. I joked about the HoloLens, but I really do see them trying to integrate the HoloLens experience into Teams, and perhaps using some 3D, even if it's only avatars. They've already got avatars, 3D avatars woven in. I expect, when we see that in HoloLens, it'll be a completely different experience. Beyond that, a lot of the talk, and I recently did a session about this, there are, today there are hearing aids that double as Bluetooth headphone. Next wave, they're talking about implants that will enable you to hear and see, maybe, without having to have any equipment whatsoever. A little frightening, kind of a science fiction reach, but if you think back a couple of years, a lot of the things we're doing today were considered a science fiction reach. So what the heck? But beyond that, it gets harder and harder to predict the future. It may be that SharePoint and Teams become one platform at some point.
Okay, we got a couple of licensing questions for you that hopefully you can help us out with. Shane wants to know, will Teams Premium be part of E3 or E5 licenses?
It's actually an add-on, and I believe it's coming out at $10 per user per seat per month, but it is an add-on to your existing Teams plan.
Okay, and the second licensing question we have, with more a tiered version of Teams coming down the pipe, will Teams for Work/Education still be an option as well without having to upgrade?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen anything about the different versions being, and how, right now they're really just talking about Teams Premium as an add-on to whichever version you're using. So it's hard to predict.
How can other UCaaS providers compete with Teams?
I think they're not going to. And I'm glad you asked that question.
Now, I work with many of the UCaaS providers, and each one of them has a strategy for integrating with Teams. As you can see, the Teams mobile functionality is being done in conjunction with providers. It's not Microsoft becoming a phone company. So I think that that's Microsoft's end of talking about the integration with other UCaaS providers. So the good news is if you already have a UCaaS provider, you're probably not going to be forced to give it up to switch or to add the Teams functionality.
Okay, here's a concern I think a lot of us might be thinking right now. Will the current version of Teams lose functionality that is current because of Teams Premium?
Now, again, Teams Premium is an add-on to your existing Teams platform. It would be unprecedented for Microsoft to remove functionality from the base platform. That's kind of cheesy, and it's not anything I've ever seen them do.
I assume the same goes for this next question from Alex. He has a similar concern. Will Microsoft Bookings go away with Teams Premium appointments?
I don't think so. I'll tell you why I say that. Not everybody, and this is the hardest people to convince are Microsoft people. Not everybody is using Teams. And it is likely that to some extent or another it will remain that way, and bookings will remain valuable to those who are not Teams users. So, even as I'm saying it, I can envision them proving me wrong, but you can only, in some of these things, you can only really give your best guess. But I just don't see them removing bookings and denying it to those people who are not Teams users.
Does Teams require extensive training for my users?
Does it require extensive training? Well, the good news is that there is training available, not only directly through Microsoft, but also from many of the learning center providers that are out there. Teams in and of itself is an experiential platform. That is to say, you get better and better with it as you use it more. There's definitely going to be training available. Some users, actually, I believe, won't need it. And especially with Teams Premium, if you're already using Teams, I really don't think you're going to need to learn anything new because it's using the same UI and the same standards and the same, practices and procedures.
Ben wants to know, are there any plans for user-directed archive ability from within Teams for messages?
Now, I believe I did run across that. My suggestion to you, Ben, is go take a look at the Microsoft roadmap at that link that I gave you. I believe you'll be able to get the slides for this presentation after the presentation. That link will take you directly to the Microsoft roadmap, or, of course, you can Bing Microsoft Teams roadmap. See how careful I was there?
Well done. Shelley wants to know, does Teams have all the functionality of a full-featured PBX like hunt groups, auto attendance, and front desk call handling?
I'm just thinking through the features list. One of the biggest complaints I've heard from the UCaaS providers is that customers, more often than not, and I think one of them told me it's actually 9 out of 10 of their customers use UCaaS as a full PBX replacement. So even if Teams didn't have it all, because a lot of that is really coming, like hunt groups and SIP enabled is all coming from the carrier. There is no carrier I've spoken to who isn't confident that they can provide their customer with way more than they could get from replacing a PBX with another PBX. The practice is now officially frowned upon.
So yeah, I mean, you're going to see a better version. And by the way, one of the exciting announcements is that Cisco has now joined the Microsoft Teams Enabled Alliance. And so you're going to see Cisco equipment become available to use with Teams.
Hey, what do you think will happen to UN-mediated interpersonal communication?
What do I think will happen to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What? If you go back to the beginning, I mean, mediated interpersonal communication was probably initially coined many years ago by Marshall McLuhan. It has, at first it was telephone, was mediated interpersonal communication. And as we moved into the 1990s, the aughts, the 2010s and so forth, we saw a rapid acceleration of the definition. But today, mediated interpersonal communication talks about people being able to communicate with other people any way they want to at any time from any place across any network. That level of latitude, that level of flexibility is only going to continue to expand. Hillary Clinton told us that it takes a village. Well, the fact is that mediated interpersonal communication makes the world a village. And so that's where I see it going. I see it becoming effortless to talk to anybody you need to talk to, whenever you need to talk to them, wherever they may be. We all become placeless.
Okay, that actually looks like all the questions we have for now. Thanks, Cohen. The information was great. So thanks for the talk, Howard.
Thank you, Chris. And thank all of you for attending.